Light rain starts early in the morning and intensifies as the day progresses. Warm air with accompanying rain will increase the risk of localized flooding.
Hurricane Harvey has made landfall.
On August 25th, 2017, Hurricane Harvey made landfall in the middle of the Texas coastline, bringing with it rain and winds that have never been seen before. On August 29th, Harvey made its way to southeast Texas and stalled, in some areas pouring over 40 inches of rain in less than 48 hours.
But this was another level. I mean, it touched every part of the house. You know, there was nothing that wasn't affected somewhat.
It flooded everything. Total flood.
The other hurricanes just came through with the wind, the rain, and moved on, but Harvey just sat in one spot and just dumped 60 inches of water on us.
1 year later, in the small town of Winnie, the effects of Harvey can still be seen as many residents are still trying to rebuild from the disaster. One such resident, Lester Mouton, recounts how the storm affected his family for the months that followed.
We had about 13 inches in the house. So you had to go at least 4 feet up, which is what we were told. We went up all the way, as far as the sheetrock goes, we went all the way to the ceiling. One of the things that I'll never forget is walking through the house. Obviously walking the house through the water, that was one of the things. The other thing would be seeing all the material, you know, the sheetrock, the insulation, you know, the trim and everything piled in the middle of the rooms. I mean, it was as tall as I was in every room. And I was just like, it is going to take forever to get this out of here, to clean this up. It took a surprisingly long amount of time to just dry out the house. Like, it took almost a month just to dry the whole house out. So that was kind of surprising in of itself, just, you know, the start of it. But it was just trying to get contractors, trying to nail down contractors. They would tell you they would come, they wouldn't show up. I'm sure that's probably a normal story for a lot of people.
Today, the Mouton home is nearing completion. Trim work is all that is left before the family can finally move on. Just outside of town, another couple lost their home and has decided to rebuild. Mike and Carla Watson had to watch as the floodwaters rose above anything they've seen before.
It got 13 inches is the highest. It got above the plugs. It ruined everything that was on the floor. It got up into my second drawer of our dressers. So things that were on the walls and the top of the closets didn't get ruined by water, but because it sat here before we could get all to it, it mildewed.
1 year later, the Watsons are still displaced as they continue to rebuild.
Well, we lived with a friend for 3 weeks, and then we've been in a camper. September the 16th will be a year.
We lived in a mobile home for over 20 years, and we just didn't want to. We wanted something better.
Well, and we looked at double wide, something that we thought was built better and bigger, but it was going to cost over $100,000. This is going to cost us, because of our friends and the friends that we have that have the skills to do what's needed to build a house, it is actually costing us less than $100,000 to build a much bigger and more sturdy. It's going to be here a lot longer than a mobile home ever will.
A higher foundation and a more stable home are the goals to have something better than before. Construction is still going on to this day. Along the I-10 corridor leading out of Winnie, the floodwaters turned the highway into an extension of the Gulf. Lower parts of the landscape took on more water than any other part of town. It's here, just off of I-10, that the Potier family lost everything. Even living in an elevated trailer meant nothing to Hurricane Harvey.
4 foot off the ground, still had 5 foot of water in my house, so all I got's a slab where the house used to be. The cleanup took long because the water stayed for a little over a week before we can even get back here to do anything. We still had to come back here in boats after a week passed, and then once the water got down, then we was able to start cleanup.
Brent and his family stayed with friends for months following the storm, all the while having to clear the land where their home used to be.
And then FEMA finally came out and gave us a trailer to where we can stay on our property and try to start cleanup.
1 year later, the rebuilding for the Potier family is still in the planning stages. The concrete slab still sits vacant, waiting for the family's new home. It's always difficult to hear about natural disasters. Even more difficult is having to live through them and to see firsthand the lasting effects that can linger in a community. Things may appear fine now after all this time, but for some, there will always be a constant reminder of what used to be. But with that comes hopes for something better.